987 years later, a child is born. Lighthearted Prelude. You, dressed in a loose-fitting green t-shirt and blue jean shorts, and your three companions, a red-headed girl with long hair and overalls, a young girl with cropped green hair and a green sundress, and a blue-skinned Zora girl from the Lake Hylia slums. All are sitting together upstairs in front of your small TV in your room, watching the introduction cinematics of The Legend of Zelda. It's a new, first-of-its-kind, two-part release, a game and a movie. The first ever successful game-to-movie or movie-to-game, in your opinion. Since they're both a reflection of each other, they are appropriate. You like the game better because you're in control of the action, but still love the movie as it is essentially a walkthrough for the hardest but most rewarding path through the game. You're finishing the intro of the game as Ganon vanquishes Link when your mother enters. "Oh, you kids, you shouldn't be playing inside on such a nice day like this. Go on, shoot, get some fresh air. I know it's a brand new game and you want to play it all right away, but you too, Link, come on, outside." The green-haired girl playfully punches you in the arm. "Yeah, little hero," she laughs. "Let's go out and take a swim." The redhead quickly interrupted. "Or ride horses. Come on, Crystal, horses are way funner than water. Right, Rutostasia?" The Zora girl shied away and turned her head down. "I guess so," she muttered. "Geez, Malin, you're getting to be just as bad as your sister Marin used to be. Why have you started to pick on Ruto so much anyways?" Crystal demanded. Rutostasia just quietly said, "It's okay," and tried to make herself as small and unapparent as possible, not wanting to stir anything up. "Hey, don't blame me for how Marin acted when she ran away." They began bickering, but you ignore them and unintentionally sneak away, right out the front door. It didn't take long for your friends to notice and give chase. "Link, wait up!" Ruto called out, and was the first to run down the stairs after you. All four of you gathered outside of the front door and formed in a circle around each other. "What do you guys want to do, then?" asked Malin. "I'm down for swimming," Rutostasia said with negligibly more confidence than before. "You would," Malin accused, to which Crystal slugged her in the shoulder. "What's the matter with you, Malin? You're never that mean." Malin choked away a sob and said nothing, putting on a stern face. "It's okay, Chris, I can handle myself," Ruto said confidently, trying to draw attention away from Malin. You suddenly fall to the grass on your back, gaining instant attention. The three girls rushed down to ask if you were okay, but you simply smirk and pat the grass beside you. They giggle and lay down in a cross with you, all four of your heads together. The four of you lay about through most of the afternoon, talking, giggling, occasionally getting up and playfully sparring or playing tag. The afternoon was hot and uncomfortable, but it was getting closer to sundown when Rutostasia suggested some parkour. "I ought to head home soon, but I don't want the fun to end right away. Anyone up for some free running to my place?" Excited agreements all around. "That's a great idea, Ruto," Malin exclaims. "Yeah, I'm in. I'll call Mom and let her know I'm sleeping over at Link's. She won't know I'm in the slums, so she won't worry," Crystal replied, taking out her Game Boy and selecting a contact. You were beaming, lips ear to ear, baring happy teeth. The four of you stretched out on the grass, barefoot. Forward bends, knee dips, horse stance, splits, and neck rolls. All of the kids getting pumped up and excited. You were twisting your torso slowly side to side as the girls defined their marks. "Come on, Link," Crystal called from the starting line. "We're waiting on you." You took your mark between her and Ruto and bent down along with your friends. "I'll call it," Malin declared. "Ready?" Three heads nodding. 3. She paused absurdly long. 2. A fan of suspense, she waited until her friends got impatient and fidgety. 1. She took off first. "Hey, what about go?" Ruto called, dashing forward, ever as awkwardly as Azora, yet still with unprecedented grace for her people. You and Crystal took off together, inches behind her, intentionally waiting on each other. South along Main Street, leading out of downtown Hyrule Metro area. Although you lived in nearby suburbs, not the city, all roads lead to Hyrule. You caught up with Malin, who caught sight of her companions and whistled sharply. "Come on, Epona! Join us!" She had ridden her horse out to visit, and they two were inseparable, like life mates. Epona galloped right over. "Cheater!" Crystal giggled. "You can't ride in parkour." Ruto giggled and veered off the road as it tapered into the undeveloped open fields northeast of Lake Hylia slums. She knew she'd win if she could reach the shore even halfway behind her friends. No one can outswim Azora. A few moments later, when you caught sight of her from the corner of your eye, deviating from Malin's lead, you took off to follow Ruto, tapping Crystal's shoulder and nodding in Ruto's direction. She nodded. "Hey Malin, Ruto is playing to win. Can your horse swim?" She laughed. Malin was competitive, but had too many personal problems as of late to answer or focus on the fun. She was flooded with grief that she would not share with anyone but her most trusted friends. And even though they were here with her now, she still hasn't told but one friend. Her eyes involuntarily welled up with tears, but she blinked them away and veered toward the shore and followed from behind, slowing down. Crystal was fiercely competitive, but she liked you, her friend, too much to try to outpace you. She was struggling with herself beside you, but finally bolted ahead, running past Ruto, reaching the shore first. She quickly fished out and tossed her Game Boy into the grass, diving right in. You then looked back toward Malin, who was walking now, horse following. You slowed, she noticed and shooed you ahead, so you dash on, catching up quickly. Ruto looked back when you passed her, seeing Malin mount her horse. She gave up racing and waited for her to catch up. Malin noticed and picked up pace. When she was within 20 yards, Ruto called out, "Chris dropped her phone. Could you ride it out to the house and drop it off for us?" As she shouted back, Malin smiled and gave an exaggerated nod and wave to make sure Ruto could see her answer clearly. Ruto waved, then hobbled ahead quickly, pointing to the cell phone in the grass, as she dove into the lake without looking back, trading the awkward terrain hobble for noble aquatic grace. Crystal almost neared the stepladder on the pier behind Ruto's adoptive family's shanty. You were catching up, but Ruto was torpedoing madly toward both of you, then dove deep, disappearing for a moment, and suddenly jumped out of the water a few times, as if to announce herself. Crystal was first to reach the ladder, and already halfway up, looking back at the splashing. Astonished. "Geez, that's fast," she observed aloud. You grabbed the ladder as Crystal exclaimed at Ruto, who dove deep and spiraled down out of sight into the deep blue lake. Crystal hastily reached for the top, but lost her footing, slipped, and she had to struggle to climb from halfway, almost falling into you as you ascended. You assisted her by offering one hand for a foothold as she slid down, though really you were trying to block for impact. "Thanks, Link," Crystal smiled down on you as Ruto splashed out of the water and straight up to her front door, then entered. "But it looks like we lost," she finished off spontaneously. Ruto was exiting her front door as you were getting your last step up, while Saria offered a hand. "Hey, I wrote Saria instead of Crystal there. Oops, I gotta fix that." You both grabbed towels Ruto had brought out, a strange commodity in a Zora community, but she had uncommon friends for a young Zora in today's world. You all smiled and laughed as you and Crystal dried off. "I'm gonna have to go back for my Game Boy, you know," she started, but noticed Ruto's expression change, looking sarcastic, or concerned, or disgusted, or... "What?" Crystal requested. "Malin will bring it with her. I asked her to grab it as I pointed it out and jumped in the lake." The three of you chatted idly, sitting on the dock's edge, enjoying the end of the afternoon into the oncoming evening. You listened as they discussed all kinds of things and various topics, waiting for Malin. "And so they're out of town for a while. I have the shanty all to myself for the foreseeable future," Ruto had finished explaining, contented. "I heard this shanty town was built on the remains of an ancient temple," Crystal said, partly out of the blue. Ruto began to respond when the familiar clopping pattern of a friend's horse interrupted her thoughts. "Oh, there's your phone," she said. The four of you went inside, and Ruto offered some herbal tea she'd prepared when retrieving the towels. So you sat around her vacant adobe with your friends and listened attentively, relaxing. The conversation was mostly quiet and plain. Local scenes, weather talk, mutual financial woes to look forward to as adults, the new Legend of Zelda release, then the mythology of the hero came up, as it usually does because of your name, but it subsided without a whimper or a bang. None of you actually knew very much about the legends. Malin was silent most of this time, and Ruto nudged her. "You told me. Come on, we all care about you," she whispered. Malin was too proud to cry, but couldn't hold back the tears anymore. She didn't sob or cry, but choked down her grief and breathed deeply, ignoring the eye leak she had sprung in spite of this effort. "It's my mom. She's so very ill." She paused long and hard, trying to even out her breathing. "What's wrong with Crimea?" Crystal exclaimed. Their mothers had been great friends before Malin warmed up to Crystal. Chris all but lived vicariously through her mother and considered Crimea to be her own friend long before she did Malin or her elder sister, Marin, whom had a self-possessed lifestyle, mostly separate and alone. Malin had lost her resolve. She was hiding her grief for far too long in one day. Usually she would find a tree stump to sit on and deal with her emotions alone, but her usual routine was delayed by a visit to Rutostasia's adobe. She broke down and cried, embarrassingly, in front of her friends. The only people, perhaps, whom in front of she could survive the shame of even doing so. Between sobs, she explained all she knew. "The doctors say it's the cold air off the mountain, and told her to stay warm in bed. But Dad and Ingo both think it's a cop-out, that the doctors don't know anymore." She sobbed, gasped for air, and slowed her breath. They don't know any more about it than we do." Her tone became less grief-stricken and more enraged as she continued. "They say that it will pass, to keep her sipping water and wrapped up in bed, but they don't understand how long it's been." She was getting madder and madder at the thought of her mother's state. "They don't understand how frail and weak it's making her. She can't stay in bed and do nothing. She needs to be out with the sky, the wind, the cows, and the horses." She nearly about screeched that last word. Horses were her life and world, and the whole ranch was her mother's life and world. Everything up to this moment had been build up and more build up. The horses reminded her all too much of her love and affection for the ranch and her mother, and she became disassociated for a moment. Lon Lon Romani Ranch, locally known as the LLRR, or Double LR, even the LR Ranch, was once a great and economic foothold in northeast Hyrule. That is, until her mother struck ill a year ago, as if the two, person and property, had intertwined health. Ingo was too selfish to do half the work Crimea did, and Malin's father Talon was a lazy man who slept more than he worked. But lately he was too attentive to his wife for that to be the case. Malin had never seen her father awake for so many hours in a day, so constantly beside her mother, his wife. The cows had all but destroyed the last bush on the property, and had already mowed away the grass, leaving the ranch dry, dusty, and brown, an insult and injury to its former glory. Everyone had fallen as silent as you, except you, as you sigh heavily and reach to Malin's hands. "Thanks, Link. You're a courageous friend, you know that?" she said, smiling, grabbing a hold with one hand and wiping the tears from her eyes with the other. Crystal moved in to initiate a group hug, and Ruto awkwardly and reluctantly joined in. The day was over. The friends stayed well into the night, and eventually Crystal's Game Boy chirped a secret sound. Mom's asking where we are. Looks like the jig is up. Come on, Link. Maybe Malin will give us a ride back to your house, she said. Malin smiled but said nothing. She just nodded. She was spent. Ruto said she wanted to go to bed, so the remaining of your three companions rode together slowly in silence, twilight coming on quickly, the skies having long lost their beautiful red and pink hues in the west. No one said anything until they were out of the lake and beyond its outer shores. Do you want us to stay at your place tonight, Malin? Crystal asked innocently. Malin's heart throbbed, and her answer was caught in her throat. She half turned her head, but immediately hesitated. Crystal leaned in. The three of you looked quite silly sharing a horse, and Malin becoming self-conscious about it, plus regaining her usual grace, she turned back and smiled. Crystal leaned back into you, when Malin replied. That's a pretty good idea, actually. Her heart too heavy to convey her genuine excitement. Crystal snapped her hand held open and selected contact. While she waited, she teased you. How come you're the only kid in Hyrule who doesn't have a Game Boy? You smile but say nothing, just shaking your head and shrugging. Crystal laughed. Whatever. She spoke into her mic. Hi, Mom. Yeah, I know. Yes, I know. I'm sorry. We're fine. Yes. Yeah, I know. We're fine. Okay, Ruto was eaten by the lake monster again, and Malin was eaten by her poor horse, she patronized. You smiled as you admired this silly relationship between Crystal and her mother. Something about it had a sneaky feel to it and made you wonder at times what was really going on, as if there was more to it than the silliness you saw. Crystal continued her call. Yeah, I know. She laughed. Call Link's house, okay? We're staying at Malin's tonight. She needs friends, and we can't say no. And hung up without a goodbye. Your mom lets you get away with everything, Crystal. My mom would have had me cleaning the barn and stables sun up till sundown for a month if I made demands like that. For the first time in months, she genuinely laughed, even though she felt only guilt, as if she should be cleaning the stables forever. However, her similar admiration for her family's friends lifted her heart. Link, you want to grab anything from home on the way? She asked as they approached your house at the settling in of stars and moonlight. Grab the satchel, Link, Crystal said excitedly, a thematic gift she had bought you to go with your newly acquired movie and video game box set. You're slightly embarrassed as you thought it was more like a purse, but you couldn't deny your friends, and nodded in response. Crystal nudged Malin. They'll be just like the Link in the movie, she giggled. Malin's expression became serious and concerned, but she said nothing. It was nearing midnight before your trio finally arrived at the dilapidated overhang that had 2 huge L's and 2 huge R's with tiny fine print in between that was meant to read out as Lon Lon Romani Ranch across the unmaintained wood. Malin hated to see her home go to such waste like that and tried not to look. You stared at it incredulous, so much worn away in such a short time. No C or H, 2 small O's in Lon and Romani, and 2 missing N's made the sign look like it read L-N Lo R I Ran. It had been a decade since you and Malin met, and you only remembered being there once, but it was such a pristine place. You couldn't help but think this mystery illness had something to do with it, and wouldn't shake the clamps you felt gripping your heart at the thought. How come you never invite us to your house, Crystal? Malin perked, not really even asking, but to clear the silence. However, Crystal fell further silent and just curled her green bangs with a finger. You abruptly dismounted and startled the girls. Whoa, Malin cried out, half to her horse, half to you. A little warning next time, okay, hero? She joked, referring to the satchel with a nod. You smile and pat the satchel. You thought it really did make you look like the hero of time, just with darker hair, no tunic, and no equipment. Okay, so you hardly looked anything like the hero, but you like to think you did. Your mother always said you had the blondest hair in the world when you were born, nevertheless. You jog alongside Epona and friends, down the drive to the ranch house. Ingo was sleeping on the porch, arms folded sternly over his chest, and a seemingly permanent scowl painted his lips. Malin and Crystal dismounted Epona, and Malin told you to both wait at the porch while she took her horse to the corral and closed it up. Crystal was being very self-conscious ever since Malin's innocent question, and you notice her contemplative eyes. You step up to her to break her focus, smiling with your eyes, looking into hers. She says, "Oh, Link, you always know what to say, don't you?" Then she smiled. The comment was just loud enough. It shocked Ingo out of his sleep, and he shouted out, "Who's there? Thieves? Brawlers? Mafioso? Get off my property!" He was still dreaming, but didn't know he was awake, and took off running after you and Crystal. You grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the corral, and take off running for Malin. "Malin, Ingo's gone nuts!" Crystal called out ahead. You look back and can see Ingo veer off toward the stables. Probably getting a horse, you think. You run ahead faster and clear the gate just as Malin is closing it, bolting to the horse. Jumping on Epona's back, you turn her around and gallop to the gate. Crystal and Malin traded places with you and Epona. They too, hiding behind the corral gate, and you, riding Epona expertly, jump the gate and gallop off toward Ingo to distract him from the girls. "Thief!" he calls out when he sees you riding. You lead Ingo around the corral for a few laps before Talon storms out of the house, ranting and spouting. "What in tarnation is going on out here? I'd better not have heard someone stealing my horses," he belted, voice surely carrying across the entire span of ranch, just as you and Ingo are coming around your third lap. You halt Epona and stop right in front of Talon, who glares furiously at you. Ingo came around a little too quickly and halted his horse a little too late. The horse compensated, but Ingo did not, and Ingo was flung off the horse's back and directly into Talon's huge belly, knocking the both of them to the ground. Inside the ranch, the three of you and Talon sat at the dinner table while Ingo stood sullenly in the threshold between the dining and living rooms, thinly hiding his shame behind anger. Talon's demeanor was reversed, calm, collected. He was happy even as to cater to his daughter's guests, but upset given the circumstances of his wife's health and the hour. "I got no qualms putting y'all up for the night, but I'd appreciate more warning next time you come home at nearly 2 o'clock in the morning with friends. Could have put out some fresh milk for y'all." Malin recoiled at the thought of giving away free milk while the cows starved, turned to say something, gaping at her father, but couldn't bring herself to fault his generous hospitality, and looked down into her lap instead, torn between pride, concern, and shame. Talon yawned big and loud. "Oh, y'all get some sleep. I'll let you sleep in given school's out this summer, and you're up so late. You need your rest," he said as he got up from the dining table, beckoning Ingo to the porch. The three kids wandered into the living room, but could hear Talon sternly lecturing Ingo about making hasty decisions and acting recklessly. Malin and Crystal were totally wiped out and could barely keep an eye open as they took opposite arms of the couch and laid their heads down. You draped the enormous quilt laying across the back of the couch over the two and retreat to the armchair beside Crystal's head. You could barely hear Malin murmuring something about her mother's knitting as she fell unconscious. "Mom knitted the quilt when Marin was..." Everyone had settled in for the night. The witching hour was on, and such a fascinating time for you. You feel very alive and alert and can't sleep, just waiting for your friend's breathing to even out so you could quietly make your escape into the night air. Dozing off briefly for a half hour or so, you are soon awakened by a faint sound coming from outside. Opening your eyes and listening, it sounds like laughter? You quietly creep out the armchair and sneak toward the front door. There it is again, but it sounded distant. You hesitate at the doorknob.